The Houthis in Yemen have claimed responsibility for a missile attack that struck inside the perimeter.
On March 5, 2025, the Houthis made their most unforgiving mistake. They launched a missile straight towards the $30 million US MQ-9 Reaper drone that was in international airspace. The MQ-9 Reaper is a symbol of American excellence in surveillance and targeting. This high-tech piece was a direct challenge to the United States military, who certainly wouldn't hold back. For several months, the Houthis have been poking the United States military by targeting U.S. cargo ships, attacking U.S. Navy vessels, and disrupting global trade routes. The U.S. has certainly held back to avoid any conflict, but this attack on their $30 million surveillance is a line they shouldn't have crossed. When it comes to war, there are certain parties that you shouldn't provoke, and the United States military is one of them. This continuous poking and attack by the Houthis has forced them to retaliate. When the U.S. military retaliates, you don't want to be on the receiving end. Their response to the Houthis wasn't just retaliation. It was a global message to the world that you don't want to mess with the U.S. military. You must be wondering, they have shot down just a surveillance drone, why such retaliation now? To understand this response from the United States, we need to go back in time to understand where and how it all started. The Ansar Allah, or more commonly known as the Houthis, is a powerful militant group operating out of northern Yemen. They are backed by Iran, who equips them with some of their finest warfare technology to execute their mission. A group which originated in domestic insurgency has quickly become one of the biggest forces in the region with access to some of the finest weapons available. In the past few years, the Houthis have significantly ramped up their campaign of aggression against Yemeni civil war adversaries and even the United States. These attacks started off as hit-and-run tactics, but soon evolved into strategic coordinated attacks using anti-ship missiles and drone attacks. With these attacks, they weren't just making these voices heard, they were disrupting global trade and economy. Slowly, they took control of the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, which is one of the world's most critical maritime choke points that connects the Gulf of Aden to the Red Sea. Whenever an oil tanker, commercial vessel, or even Navy ships entered these waters, they were under constant threat. The surprising thing about these attacks was that they were calculated moves strategized to destabilize the region and strengthen Houthi position. Even after these attacks, the United States didn't respond viciously. They wanted to reply with strategy, patience, diplomacy, and limited strikes. The government did not want a full-blown conflict, as it would damage their political stance. The Houthis, seeing no reply, decided up their attacks, and by early 2025, the U.S. military had enough. They were given the green signal by U.S. government when their $30 million drone was shot down. They were ready to respond back. On the morning of March 5, 2025, the U.S. MQ-9 Reaper drone was performing a standard reconnaissance mission over the Red Sea. The MQ-9 Reaper is undoubtedly one of the finest and most advanced unmanned aerial vehicles, or UAVs, available in the market. It is capable of traveling at higher altitudes for a longer period of time, and has the ability to conduct surveillance, reconnaissance, and even precision strikes when required. The MQ-9 Reaper was performing a standard reconnaissance mission in a calm and clear sky. It had a simple task: monitor maritime activity near the Bab el-Mandeb Strait for any Houthi movement. The morning seemed pretty ordinary until the threat started to creep up. Without any prior warning, a surface-to-air missile ripped through the atmosphere from the Houthi-controlled Yemen. The incoming warhead was an SA-6, which was locked onto the drone with immaculate precision. The team at base tried to deploy countermeasures by firing flares and jamming electronic signals to reroute the warhead. This chase continued for a good while, but in the end, the MQ-9 Reaper drone was hit by the SA-6 and it spiraled into the Red Sea.
Yemen. The Houthis said they shot down a US MQ-9 Reaper drone off the coast.
The MQ-9 Reaper strike wasn't just a loss of hardware to the United States. It was a direct strike to the U.S. military asset in international airspace, which is an act that violated international law. News of the shootdown quickly spread across, and the entire world had its eyes set on the U.S. Navy for their next step. The government had had enough, and they made it pretty clear that the Houthi attacks are no longer a nuisance. They are now a direct threat to the United States' security. The Houthis thought that they had sent a strong message to the United States, but in reality, it was the other way around. This drone strike was the final nail in the coffin for U.S. patience, and they are now ready to retaliate. Spoiler alert, it's going to be stronger and more destructive. With the strike on MQ-9 Reaper, the tones of the White House and the Pentagon Hall shifted from restraint to resolve and strike. For months, the U.S. military had held their attacks on the Houthis, issued warnings, carried out limited strikes, and relied on diplomatic pressure to resolve things. However, this time, they lost a high-tech $30 million drone in international airspace. They won't stand back. Senior U.S. military officials sat behind closed doors to evaluate the situation and plan their retaliatory attacks on the Houthis. The intelligence briefings were urgent, as the U.S. government wanted to respond as quickly and swiftly as possible. Their recommendations were crystal clear. The Houthis have become too bold, capable, and dangerous, which is why they need to react quickly.
I'm ready? Yep. All right. Brakes are out. Throttle full forward. 83, rolling. 84. Rotate.
The U.S. government had issued multiple commands to the military forces, and they were ready to strike. Naval assets in the Red Sea were repositioned, and the strike aircraft was ready to cause chaos. 10 days after the attack, the calm waters of the Red Sea rippled with roar of war. From the decks of USS Carney and USS Gravely, several Tomahawk cruise missiles were fired in a perfect unison. Each missile was a target to penetrate deep within Sana'a, the capital of Yemen, and the base of Houthi bunkers. These hardened bunkers housed Iranian military supplies which the Houthis used to attack U.S. assets.
Tensions in the nearby Red Sea. A U.S. warship shot down 14 drones fired by suspected Houthi rebels in Yemen.
Following the Mk-9 Reaper attack, U.S. surveillance drones extracted data and mapped out the coordinates, and with help from intelligence, it was confirmed that these sites were the center of all Houthi programs. The Tomahawks rose to the position carrying not just explosives, but also a clear message for the Houthis and especially Iran. The impact of this strike was surgical. These buildings, which once assembled and launched drone attacks on the U.S. naval assets and commercial vessels in the Red Sea, were leveled. Fire spread through the storage facilities, and the Houthis, they ran in chaos. For the second wave, the U.S. military moved to the aerial space. Hours after the Tomahawk site, the USS Harry S. Truman launched a squadron of FA-18 Super Hornets into the Yemeni airspace. These jets flew low and fast across the rugged Yemeni landscape into the Houthi region. Their aim was to target the infrastructure the opposition was using, especially their power station. This area has been providing them the sufficient electricity to launch drone strikes, maintain effective communication, and command outposts. With this station out of order, the U.S. would have the Houthis disarmed quickly. The squadron rose and swiftly destroyed the target. Precision-guided munitions were dropped into the heart of the facility, which triggered a chain reaction that disrupted energy in the region, and the Houthi base was plunged into darkness. This mission wasn't turn off the lights. Instead, it was about disabling opposition's logistics. Without access to power, they couldn't communicate. Houthi command centers were in chaos, and the leadership had to reroute operations with the limited resources they had. As the Houthis were trying to regroup, the U.S. military launched their wave, the long-range bombers. From the Incirlik Air Base in Turkey, the U.S. launched their long-range supersonic bombers called the B-1B Lancers. This pair slipped into the dark nights, cloaked in stealth with an aim to cause a serious blow to the Houthis. The B-1B Lancers carried the infamous JASSM, or Joint Air-to-Surface Standoff missile. These missiles aren't your ordinary warheads. They were precision-guided, low-observable GPS-enabled projectiles that are capable of penetrating deep into reinforced structures from several hundred miles away. They targeted these missiles at the Houthi UAV production facility. This facility was reported to be assembling the Irani Shahed series drones, which were used often to target commercial vessels in the Red Sea. As the JASSMs hit their target, the facility erupted by a series of explosions. It first penetrated the fortified exterior, and then its blast ignited fuel reserves, destroyed assembly equipment, and the facility was turned to mere dust. The U.S. military didn't stop there with the attacks, as they initiated another aerial assault. From their AI Udeid Air Base in Qatar and Al Dhafra in the UAE, a fleet of F-15E Strike Eagles was launched. These jets were launched to carry out a coordinated strike at different Houthi weapon storage sites. These sites were reportedly housing explosives, anti-aircraft systems, and several short-range missiles. Even after 3 explosive damages, the U.S. military did not hold back. In a few minutes, they turned fuels, munitions, and rockets into nothing but dust. While the other strikes were surgical, this one was loud and clear. Explosions from these strikes lit up the night and sent shockwaves miles ahead. They wanted to these visuals as they wanted the Houthis and their backer Iran to know that these strikes are not just punishments, but a systematic takedown. Each attack was carried out in a way that it dismantled Houthi position. As each storage bunker was destroyed one by one, the opposition was displaced. While the jets were dominating Yemeni airspace, the U.S. Navy proceeded with their second base of attack. They brought in the P-8 Poseidon, an aircraft that is typically used for anti-submarine warfare. The Poseidon was repurposed as a radar which flew near the Bab el-Mandeb Strait to detect and target Houthi radar systems. These radars were a key part of Houthi military infrastructure as it allowed them to launch attacks at naval vessels. Thanks to real-time intelligence and a series of attacks from the sky and the sea, the U.S. Navy was successful in dismantling the radar domes and command nodes to disrupt the Houthi command center. With this attack, the Houthis were left with little tracking and targeting capabilities, which would take them several years to rebuild. At the end came 2 B-52 Stratofortresses from Diego Garcia. These bombers soared over northern Yemen carrying over 70 unguided bombs. Why unguided? To cause pure destruction without any clear motive. Its target was Houthi vehicle routes, logistic hubs, and training camps. This type of bombing is known as carpet bombing, and it is a strong symbol that you don't want to mess with us.
Than any other aircraft in history. During Desert Storm, the Buff dropped over 40% of the coalition's total bombs.
By the end of this strike, the Houthis had lost their backbone. With no access to their radars, drones, logistics, and weapons, they're likely to hold back for a few years until they regroup. That's all for today. How do you think the Houthi rebels will react to this abomination now? Let me know in the comments section below. While you're there, make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this.